Earlier in the lesson, we talked extensively about how everything on a web page is a box. Now, before you start positioning boxes, you need a better understanding of the box model, which is what you see on the screen here. There's the concept of margins and borders, padding, and content, all of which makes up the box on the web page. A link to this demo is provided in the instructor notes section, so feel free to follow along. If we explore this box in Developer Tools, you'll find a similar box to what you see on the page in the Computed tab. You see we have a margin, a border, padding, and content. Let's explore each of these items. Starting at the very center, we have our content, and this is the image or text that's appearing on the website. You can think of it as the nucleus. It sits at the very center, and the other layers serve to protect it so that other items on the page either don't overlap or sit too close so that the website isn't very visually appealing. In the next layer, we have the padding, and this is the green color. The padding clears an area around the content, and it's affected by the background color of the box. So you can think of it as the space inside of the box that protects the content directly. Border then goes around the padding and the content, and the border is inherited from the color property of the box. And lastly, our outer layer is the margin, and this clears an area around the border. The margin doesn't have a background color, and it's completely transparent, and you can think of this as the space between boxes. Now you can play along with the widths of each of these and see how it affects the box both here and in the Computed tab. For example, if I change the margin from 20 pixels to 30 pixels, you'll notice that we got a little bit of extra space here at the top. And if you move to the Computed tab, you see that we have 30 pixels here at the top and 30 pixels at the bottom. Moving back to 20, we now go back to 20 pixels. Feel free to stick around here and play a little bit, changing the widths of the margin, border, padding, and content, and see how it affects the box both here and in the Computed tab. Don't worry, I'll still be here when you get back. Now, by default, the size of your actual element is equal to the sum of the border, padding, and content widths. So if we wanted to compute the width of the element shown on the page, we would have a left border of 10, plus a left padding of 30, plus a content width of 200, plus the right padding of 30, and the right border of 10. So our actual element width is actually 280 pixels, not just the 200 pixel width of the content. Now, this makes it kind of hard to know how much space the box will actually take on the screen without recalculating it each and every time you change one of these values. But luckily, an easier to use model has been developed, and we should plan to use that. This is CSS style, box sizing, border box. This makes the calculation of the element size include both the border and padding so that it's easier to make layouts. You can just set the width of the overall box, and no matter how you tweak the padding and border sizes, the size of the box will always stay the same. Remember though that margin is not included in this size. However, there is one drawback with this model. Isn't there always a catch? It's been developed fairly recently, so if you want to be sure that older browsers are also able to display it, you need to add what's called browser-specific prefixes. Now, these prefixes are WebKit, Moz, and MS. You can just add them in front of the style definition, and they're defined like so. As always, see the instructor notes for more information. Now, you may have noticed that we've been setting the size of a box in pixels, but it's also possible to do it as a percentage. If we go back to the My Favorite App page as an example, we can see how changing the content box from a set pixel to a percentage affects the screen size. You can also set the size of a box as either a pixel or a percentage. If you set it as a percentage, the size will change depending on how big the screen is or how encompassing the box is. If you set the box size in pixels, it will take exactly that size and will not change no matter how big or small the screen is. This can sometimes lead to a bad user experience. For example, if we look back at our My Favorite app, you'll see that this paragraph is defined as a set number of pixels. If I resize the screen, you'll see that it stays the same and disappears as I make it smaller. However, if I instead set this to be a percentage, say we want it to take up 50% of the screen, notice how the size changes as I make the screen smaller. You can also set a max width for the box, and in that case it will resize and become smaller when necessary, but not larger than the set max width. And now it's time for you to put this info into your own style sheet file. Add the border box definition and then add max width attributes to the divs encompassing the image and description of the app. Now, if we look back at our design mock, we got notes from the designer that the image should be 460 pixels wide and the description should be 705 pixels wide. Then, what happens when you add these changes to your CSS file and explore the result in Developer Tools? Did nothing change? Do we have different box sizes? Or do we have a different layout?